Esteemed judge, the accused was apprehended while attempting to purloin a loaf of bread from the neighborhood market. The prosecutor spoke with a chilling detachment, while the man merely lowered his gaze in response. All I sought was the fortitude to embrace another day of life. The courtroom erupted in gentle laughter, yet the judge remained unmoved. He had only just caught wind of the man's name. Who might he be? What could have caused the judge's eyes to brim with tears so unexpectedly? Welcome to Great Man, where elegance meets charm. Let us unveil the truth of what truly transpired. Thomas Grady, at the age of 66, had become a beloved presence in the Brooklyn neighborhood, where he had gracefully navigated the challenges of homelessness for more than a decade. Delicate and worn, adorned with a silver beard that had long been untouched by the hands of a skilled groomer. He bore an antiquated military-style backpack wherever he roamed, its faded green canvas whispering tales of time, with frayed straps that had once conformed to the standards of regulation. The townsfolk referred to him as the silent enigma. In contrast to others who sought alms or caused a ruckus, Thomas maintained a quiet solitude. He gathered bottles for recycling, graciously accepted leftovers from kind-hearted restaurant staff, and sought refuge in various doorways, mindful of not imposing on any particular business owner. What a select few were aware of was that Thomas had dedicated his service to the U.S. With a distinguished service spanning over 2 decades, I was honorably discharged from the Army in 2004. Following the passing of his beloved wife Margaret in 2008, a tragic consequence of a misdiagnosed illness by the VA hospital, Thomas found himself engulfed in a profound sorrow. He turned away assistance from his family, sold their humble apartment, generously donated the proceeds to his wife's cherished charity, and vanished into the bustling, faceless avenues of New York. At times, it feels more serene to embrace the shadows of anonymity than to bear the weight of having disappointed the one whose heart you cherished above all, he confided to a kind soul at the soup kitchen. On a bitterly cold November afternoon, as the temperatures dipped below freezing and snow loomed on the horizon, Thomas sought refuge in the warm embrace of DeLuca's Corner Market. For 3 long days, he had endured the pangs of hunger, and as he discreetly tucked a day-old loaf of bread into his coat, his hands quivered with a delicate urgency while Mr. DeLuca attended to another customer. Yet, Mr. DeLuca had gracefully adorned the space with new security mirrors. "Hold on a moment," he called out, his hand already moving toward the phone. "I must summon the authorities." Thomas chose not to run. He lingered there, the bread subtly peeking from his partially zipped jacket. "I simply sought the strength to embrace another day," he murmured softly. Within mere moments, 2 patrol officers made their graceful entrance. The younger officer, Jenkins, appeared somewhat uneasy as he gently secured the handcuffs around the frail wrists of the elderly gentleman. "Are you truly a veterinarian?" Jenkins inquired, his gaze drawn to the delicate dog tag chain that adorned Samuel's neck. "This ID has seen better days." Thomas inclined his head gracefully. "I once held a place of significance. Not any longer. I must escort you, sir." With a hint of regret, Jenkins conveyed that the store owner is pressing charges, citing your previous encounters with shoplifting. Within the precinct's walls, Thomas underwent the routine of processing, much like any other minor offender. A public defender had a fleeting encounter with him, yet appeared more preoccupied with the swift resolution of cases than truly grasping the essence of his client. Thomas found himself with a court date set for the morrow, a preliminary hearing where he would face the formal charges laid before him. As dawn broke, Thomas found himself led into the municipal courtroom of Brooklyn, clad in the same attire from the day before, now creased and weary from a night spent in confinement. There were no family members present in the audience, no character witnesses ready to speak on his behalf, only a few scattered lawyers, reporters focused on more prominent cases, and court employees engaged in their usual tasks. Case number 47,293, the state against Thomas Grady. The clerk announced with a certain detachment. The young prosecutor stood, delicately adjusting his tie with an air of sophistication. "Esteemed Your Honor, the accused was apprehended while attempting to procure a humble loaf of bread from the nearby market. In light of his previous transgressions involving minor theft and his absence of a permanent residence, we suggest that he remain in custody until the trial unfolds. The Honorable William Carmichael, a figure of authority with a reputation for his unwavering demeanor and prompt decisions, cast a brief glance at the case file, scarcely recognizing Samuel's existence. The spectators in the courtroom had already cast aside the case, viewing it as merely another transient soul navigating the labyrinth of the system. "Mr. Grady, what is your plea?" Judge Carwilliam inquired, at last raising his gaze. "Guilty, Your Honor," Thomas murmured with a gentle grace. A hunger stirred within me. A soft chuckle emerged from the back row. The judge cast a sharp glance in that direction before gracefully redirecting his focus to the paperwork before him. Thomas Edward Grady, a distinguished former staff sergeant of the United States Army. Judge Carmichael's voice softened, lingering on the identification details as he read them aloud. As the judge's expression shifted, a hush enveloped the courtroom. His hand, clasping the edge of the bench, turned pale at the knuckles. He gazed at Samuel, then returned his attention to the file, only to glance back at Thomas once more. Without a word, Judge Carwilliam rose with an air of sudden grace. The atmosphere in the courtroom became still, enveloped in a veil of bewilderment. Judges seldom rise during the course of routine hearings. For several lingering moments, he held his silence, his visage a canvas of restrained feelings. "Your Honor," the prosecutor hesitated, unsure of the proper protocol when a judge unexpectedly rose without announcing a recess. "The court shall now take a brief recess of 15 minutes, Judge Carwilliam declared, his voice carrying an unexpected rasp. "The defendant shall remain present." As the judge gracefully departed to his chambers, the courtroom was filled with a soft murmur of whispers. Thomas stood in silence, his gaze cast downward, seemingly oblivious or indifferent to the unexpected twist that his name had just invoked. What are your thoughts on veterans who have devoted themselves to their country, only to find themselves on the streets? Remain by our side to unveil the moment that captivated the entire courtroom in hushed awe. Within the confines of his chambers, Judge William Carwilliam delicately retrieved a cherished photograph from the depths of his desk drawer. It depicted a gathering of military personnel, clad in desert fatigues, poised gracefully before a medical tent in the sun-kissed landscapes of Iraq. His hands quivered gently as he beheld the image, 2 decades younger, devotedly serving as a field medic before embarking on a journey into the realm of law. And there, poised gracefully in the back row, stood Thomas Grady. The judge gracefully activated his computer, initiating a search through the military database that remained accessible to him from his esteemed work with Veteran Affairs. The service record of Thomas Grady graced the screen, affirming the judge's unspoken suspicions. Staff Sergeant Thomas Grady had dedicated himself to 3 tours, 2 in the heart of Iraq and 1 amidst the rugged landscapes of Afghanistan, where he skillfully navigated the complexities of logistics, ensuring that vital supplies found their way to forward operating bases during the most perilous moments of both conflicts. He was honored with the Bronze Star for valor after his convoy faced an ambush in 2003. Rather than seeking refuge, Thomas bravely maneuvered a blazing supply truck away from the injured, enduring injuries himself, yet heroically preserving the lives of 17 individuals. The file held a photograph that had graced the front page of the New York Times, a moment captured in time. Thomas gently cradling an injured Afghan child as he carries them towards a waiting medical helicopter during a noble humanitarian mission. For a fleeting moment, that image transformed him into an emblem of American compassion amidst the chaos of warfare, before the gaze of the public turned to other matters. Yet, it was a mission report from July 2003, recently unveiled from its shroud of secrecy, that truly captivated the judge's attention. In the midst of a tumultuous evacuation, with enemy fire raging around them, Thomas heroically bore the weight of an injured medic, Private First Class William Carmichael, traversing 2 miles to safety, all while enduring his own shrapnel wounds. "Oh my," the judge murmured, "it is he." Judge Carwilliam had devoted countless years to the pursuit of the man who had once rescued him from the brink. Yet Thomas had vanished into the tapestry of civilian existence, leaving behind no trace or forwarding address after his departure from service. The judge had never truly learned the full name of his savior. Amidst the tumult of battle, Grady's voice rang out, cutting through the clamor. As the judge contemplated this revelation, Thomas found himself seated in solitude within the courtroom, overlooked by the bailiff who busied himself with his phone during the intermission. For 15 years, Thomas had dwelled on the periphery of society, a shadow to the very system he once devoted himself to. In the wake of his beloved wife's passing, Thomas found himself engulfed in a deep sorrow, a heartache further intensified by the shadows of untreated PTSD. The misdiagnosis of Margaret's cancer at the VA hospital had shattered his trust in the system. When she departed, he turned his back on it all. His advantages, his retirement, his essence. He found himself unable to endure the suffocating bureaucracy that had let down the one he cherished above all else. For years, the local residents had regarded him as an unwelcome presence. On occasion, teenagers would hurl food at him, finding amusement in the spectacle. Shopkeepers gently washed the sidewalks where he found his rest. The police gently ushered him away as the residents expressed their concerns. Even the other souls wandering the streets maintained a respectful distance from the quiet man, who occasionally stirred from his slumber, haunted by the echoes of his nightmares. Thomas persevered, gathering bottles and cans, managing to earn just enough to procure cough medicine as the winter chill took refuge in his lungs. He never sought alms, nor did he request assistance. His military training had cultivated a profound sense of self-reliance, a steadfast quality that endured even as his circumstances began to wane. In the depths of his darkest days, Thomas would gently unveil the cherished photograph of Margaret, lovingly ensconced in plastic, safeguarding it from the harshness of the world. "Nearly there, my dear Maggie," he would murmur, just a little longer to hold on. Within the confines of his chambers, Judge Carwilliam engaged in a flurry of urgent phone calls. First, I shall visit the VA office to seek an immediate verification of Samuel's service record. Then to David Mason, now a colonel, who had once shared the camaraderie of service with both men many years prior. "Mason, it is William Carwilliam speaking. I have discovered him. The gentleman who rescued me in Fallujah. He stands before me in the courtroom at this very moment, a soul, without shelter, accused of the theft of bread." The stillness on the other end conveyed a depth of meaning before Mason finally replied, "I am but 3 hours distant. Do not allow him to depart." The judge penned a heartfelt note on elegant official letterhead. Thomas Grady transcends the ordinary existence of a homeless man. He stands as a poignant emblem of loyalty, overlooked by the very nation he devoted himself to. Judicial ethics gracefully restrained him from dismissing the case outright due to personal ties. Yet, nothing could deter him from guiding justice along a more enchanting course than originally envisioned. As the recess approached its conclusion, the judge's clerk observed a document on her desk that had not graced its surface before. The renowned image of Thomas alongside the Afghan child, accompanied by a delicate handwritten note below. There are heroes whose names linger in the shadows, never seeking the light of remembrance. The clerk discerned the elegant strokes of the handwriting, unmistakably belonging to Colonel Mason, from prior correspondence with the Court on Veteran Affairs. The bond was beginning to reveal itself. Thomas Grady was no ordinary defendant. He was a figure whose deeds had gracefully intertwined with the lives of many, including those who now wielded influence over his destiny. As court reconvened, Thomas perceived the shift at once. The judge's demeanor had undergone a remarkable transformation. The professional detachment was supplanted by an elusive sensation that Thomas found difficult to define. Esteem? Is there a sense of acknowledgement? Before Thomas could fully grasp this change, the proceedings took a most unexpected turn. In consideration of recent revelations concerning the defendant's background, Judge Carwilliam has graciously decided to delay further proceedings until a comprehensive investigation can be conducted. The defendant shall remain in custody until the hearing scheduled for tomorrow. The prosecutor appeared perplexed yet chose to remain silent. Samuel, familiar with the way systems often dictated his fate without a word of clarity, merely inclined his head in quiet acknowledgement. As Thomas was gracefully escorted away, Judge Carwilliam remarked, "And ensure that Mr. Grady is provided with a proper meal and the necessary medical care." That evening, a local news blog unveiled a headline laced with skepticism. A homeless man asserts his status as a military hero. The judge has postponed the sentencing for the individual accused of stealing bread. The comment section overflowed with a cascade of cynical perspectives. Yet another soul wandering the streets, weaving tales of a life once lived as a veteran. If he truly served, why does he not receive VA benefits rather than resorting to theft? Within the confines of the county holding facility, Thomas found himself facing the ire of a young inmate who had come across the article on a contraband phone. "Stolen valor is utterly despicable," he declared, forcefully pressing Thomas against the wall. "My brother lost his life in Afghanistan, while those who wear the uniform merely to seek sympathy remain unworthy of its honor." Thomas chose not to resist. He gracefully embraced the blow, much like he had gracefully endured society's indifference over the years. That evening, he chose to forego the meal that was offered. He gently grasped his military ID tags and the cherished photo of Margaret, pondering why, after all these years, someone had truly looked at him and seen him for who he was. Have you ever observed someone being unfairly judged merely by their outward appearance? Do share that enchanting tale. Perhaps there is a soul out there who longs to hear it. The following morning, Thomas was gracefully led back to the courtroom, blissfully unaware that a remarkable event was quietly taking shape. In a delightful contrast to the previous day's nearly vacant gallery, today every seat was graced with an eager presence. News cameras lingered outside, barred from entry, yet yearning to seize the unfolding moments that lay ahead. Samuel's bewilderment grew as he observed that his public defender had been supplanted by a distinguished elder attorney, who gracefully introduced himself as Richard Harlow from the Veterans Legal Defense Alliance. "It seems, Mr. Grady, that someone has developed a keen interest in your situation," Harlow remarked, leaving the particulars shrouded in mystery. As Thomas settled into his place at the defense table, the sound of the courtroom doors creaking open reached his ears. The audience gracefully stood as Judge Carwilliam made his entrance. However, Samuel's gaze was captivated by three military officers adorned in their splendid full-dress uniforms, who had gracefully entered alongside the court officers. "All rise for the esteemed Judge William Carmichael," the bailiff proclaimed with grace. The proceedings commenced with an air of unusual formality, the judge's demeanor strikingly distinct from that of the previous day. Prior to delving into the charges against Mr. Grady, the court shall listen to pertinent testimony regarding the defendant's background, which may cast a light upon these proceedings. Thomas gazed in bewilderment as Colonel David Mason gracefully made his way to the witness stand. Though 2 decades had passed since Thomas last laid eyes on him, Mason's military presence was as unmistakable as ever. Upon taking the oath, Mason spoke to the court with an elegance that reflected his careful preparation. "I am Colonel David Mason, presently residing at the esteemed Fort Hamilton. My acquaintance with the defendant, Staff Sergeant Thomas Grady, began during our shared deployment to Iraq in the year 2003. The colonel gracefully pivoted to meet Samuel's gaze directly. "This remarkable man standing before you heroically saved the lives of 17 brave soldiers during an ambush on our convoy near Fallujah. Amidst the chaos of heavy fire, he bravely maneuvered a blazing fuel truck away from our position, enduring second-degree burns, yet averting an explosion that could have claimed our lives." Whispers danced through the courtroom as Mason pressed on. Staff Sergeant Grady later bore the weight of a wounded medic, a young private first class by the name of William Carmichael. 2 miles to safety, even with the pain of shrapnel wounds gracing his leg. At this revelation, all gazes were drawn to Judge Carmichael, whose poised demeanor faltered ever so slightly as he offered a subtle nod of affirmation. The prosecutor rose, an air of discomfort enveloping them. "Your Honor, although this testimony reflects upon the defendant's previous character, it does not alter the undeniable truth of his act of theft." "If I may continue," Colonel Mason interjected, having perused Mr. Grady's file, "we have uncovered a notable administrative oversight. In the year 2008, a system migration led to the unfortunate termination of Thomas Grady's pension and benefits, a consequence of his failure to respond to paperwork that had been dispatched to an outdated address. For the past 15 years, he has been granted an allowance of around $1,370 each month, along with medical care for injuries sustained in service. The sum amounts to more than $246,000 in outstanding benefits. As the weight of the implications settled in, A hush enveloped the courtroom. Thomas appeared utterly taken aback, his time-worn hands delicately clutching the edge of the table. Moreover, Mason continued, unveiling a folder. We possess affidavits from 5 esteemed members of your former unit, each affirming your character and service. Among them is a letter from General Richards, who acknowledges your bravery in saving his son during that fateful ambush. Judge Carwilliam turned his gaze upon Samuel, speaking to him directly for the very first time. Mr. Grady, might I kindly request your presence at the bench? As Thomas lingered in uncertainty, the judge continued, tradition would usually dictate that I refrain from presiding over a case entwined with someone to whom I share a personal bond. Yet, I must confess that I did not recognize you yesterday. It was only after perusing your file that I came to the profound realization that you are the very man who once saved my life in Iraq. A soft murmur of awe cascaded through the gallery. The judge set aside his glasses, allowing his formal demeanor to gently soften. For nearly 2 decades, I have sought you out, yearning to express my gratitude. Your full name has always been a delightful mystery to me. Only Grady's voice echoed across the vast battlefield. When Thomas finally found his voice, it emerged, rough and unrefined, as if it had long been waiting for this moment. I was merely fulfilling my duties, sir. Your efforts exceeded the call of duty, the judge replied, and this nation has fallen short in fulfilling its obligations to you. Judge Carwilliam cast a glance toward the prosecutor. Given these remarkable circumstances, does the state wish to move forward with the charges? The young prosecutor, now visibly touched, stood with grace. With the utmost respect, Your Honor, the state respectfully requests the dismissal of all charges against Mr. Grady, with prejudice. Thus commanded, the judge replied without hesitation. Mr. Grady, you are at liberty to depart. This court offers its sincerest apologies for the profound miscarriage of justice that has reverberated far beyond these proceedings. As Thomas remained enveloped in a stunned silence, the back doors of the courtroom gracefully swung open once more. A woman in her 30s gracefully entered, her gaze wandering until it finally settled upon Samuel. She drew near with a gentle grace, tears cascading down her cheeks. "Uncle Samuel," she murmured softly. "I am Rebecca, the cherished niece of Margaret. For years, we have been searching for you." At last, Samuel's poise shattered. His shoulders gently fell as Rebecca enveloped him in her warm embrace. The first touch of humanity he had felt in years, untainted by the cold grip of handcuffs and the presence of police officers. Beyond the courtroom's threshold, reporters eagerly extended their microphones toward Colonel Mason, capturing the moment with fervent anticipation. "This matter transcends the experience of a single veteran," he asserted with conviction. "This speaks of countless Thomas Gratis, who slipped through the fissures of a system they valiantly upheld. Today, we embark on a journey to set things aright." As the afternoon sun cast its golden glow, the tale had captured the hearts of many, spreading like wildfire. As Thomas stepped out of the courthouse, news helicopters gracefully circled above, capturing the moment. He appeared polished, clean-shaven, and adorned in clothes generously given to him, accompanied by Colonel Mason and Judge Carmichael, who, though no longer involved in the case, graced the gathering as a private citizen. Mr. DeLuca, the proprietor of the store who had taken legal action, gracefully navigated through the throng of reporters to approach Samuel. "I had no idea," he murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. "I perceived you merely as another source of mischief. At this moment, I find myself enveloped in a sense of shame." Thomas merely inclined his head, his heart too full to find the words. In a mere span of 48 hours, a veterans organization gracefully established a fund for Samuel, which swiftly blossomed into a remarkable sum exceeding $200,000 in generous donations. Social media blossomed with heartfelt tales of veterans who had slipped through the delicate seams of bureaucracy, encouraging the VA to unveil a reassessment of cases involving terminated benefits. In a secluded moment, far from the prying eyes of the world, Judge Carwilliam at last engaged in the conversation he had long yearned for over 2 decades. "You bore me for 2 miles, even with shrapnel embedded in your leg," he murmured softly. "The medics informed me that you declined treatment until they ensured my stability." Thomas offered a delicate shrug. "Your circumstances were more challenging than mine. On that day, as I drifted between realms of awareness, your words reached me like a gentle whisper. You whispered, "Just continue to breathe, my dear. Your tale has yet to unfold." Those words sustained my spirit, igniting my will to persevere. I chose to become a judge to carry on the noble tradition of service, much like you have done. Thomas gazed at the judge, his perception shifting from that of an imposing authority draped in robes to the frightened young medic etched in his memories. I'm delighted that a beautiful moment emerged from that day. Not merely something good, the judge responded, but rather everything wonderful in my life since that moment. My journey, my loved ones, my opportunity to create an impact. Everything flourishes because you chose to stay by my side. After many years, a smile graced Samuel's lips, a true reflection of joy that illuminated his eyes. Not a soul shall be forsaken. That was more than mere words to me. 3 days later, Thomas found himself in the judge's chambers, adorned in a freshly tailored suit. His military decorations gracefully adorned his chest at last. The bronze star, the purple heart, and an array of ribbons weave a narrative of his valorous service. A representative from Veterans Affairs gracefully bestowed upon him his overdue benefits, along with a supplementary settlement to amend the administrative oversight. As the cameras immortalized the moment, Thomas shared his thoughts with the world for the very first time. I seek no one's sympathy. I simply wish that those who follow will not fade into obscurity as I have. The narrative evolved from a heartfelt local account to a sweeping national dialogue on the treatment of America's cherished veterans. Legislators referenced Samuel's case as they unveiled proposals to transform the benefits system. The poignant photograph of Thomas cradling the Afghan child resurfaced, this time juxtaposed with the haunting image of him wandering the streets of Brooklyn, lost and alone. A striking contrast that compelled us to ponder deeply the essence of our national priorities. Thomas Grady, once a shadow for 15 years, had now emerged as an undeniable presence. Can you recall a time when justice graced us with its presence, albeit a tad tardy, yet undeniably rewarding in its arrival? Share your tale to inspire hope in another's heart. Half a year later, Thomas found his new home in Veterans Village, a nurturing community for veterans nestled in the heart of Brooklyn. His modest apartment, the first sanctuary he could truly claim as home since Margaret's passing, held only a handful of belongings yet boasted a wall adorned with cherished photographs. Margaret on their wedding day, a cherished memory from his old unit in Iraq, and a recent photograph of him alongside Judge Carwilliam at a veterans recognition ceremony. Thomas graciously turned down numerous interview requests, yet he embraced the opportunity to share his experiences at local schools, shedding light on military service and the poignant challenges that veterans encounter upon their return home. His serene grace and candid approach struck a chord with troubled teenagers, who discovered in him a refuge free from judgment and condescension. Simply sincere tales of both valor and struggle. Every afternoon, Thomas would grace Prospect Park, seated on a bench, observing the joyful dance of children at play. At times, it was the very bench where he had once sought refuge, finding solace from the harshness of the elements that rendered his familiar doorways unwelcoming. Outside the Brooklyn courthouse, a newly unveiled bronze plaque graces the entrance. Justice is the gentle act of recalling those who have slipped into the shadows of memory. Beside this inscription, a relief sculpture gracefully portrayed Samuel, cradling the wounded medic destined to become Judge Carmichael, all set against the backdrop of the American flag. At the dedication ceremony, the mayor unveiled the establishment of an annual fund, lovingly named the Grady Initiative, dedicated to offering legal assistance to our homeless veterans. A young boy of 10, who frequently observed Thomas gathering bottles, penned an essay for his school newspaper. Not all who wear tattered garments possess ill intentions. Some individuals adorn themselves with memories instead. The essay triumphed in a citywide competition and was beautifully recited at a city council meeting, where it illuminated the pressing issue of homelessness policy. Thomas cherished a bond with Judge Carmichael, often gracing his family with his presence for delightful Sunday dinners. On a particular evening, the judge's son inquired of Thomas whether he felt any anger regarding his prolonged state of homelessness. Thomas pondered the question with great care before offering his response. I seek no one's sympathy. I simply wish that those who follow will hold dear the memories of those who have paved the way before them. On Veterans Day, Thomas graced the gathering at Fort Hamilton, adorned in his dress uniform for the first time in many years. When invited to share his thoughts, he spoke with a brevity that resonated deeply. In a time long past, I stood as a guardian of this land. Now the land has embraced me once more. His voice grew more resonant as he pressed on. Kindness arrives at the perfect moment, always. It simply requires a heart that is willing to embrace the beauty of time. As he descended from the podium, the gathered military personnel, ranging from youthful recruits to seasoned veterans, stood in a quiet salute. Thomas refined his stance and reciprocated the gesture with grace. His eyes, clear and dignified, now gazed not at the ground but ahead, embracing the promise of the future. Though justice may take its time, it is always present in the end. Persevere in your pursuit of what is just and true. In what instance have you remained resolute while the world turned its back on you? Kindly share it at your earliest convenience. Join QH Incredible Stories to witness the triumph of truth and justice in the end. Share this video with a soul who seeks inspiration in choosing the path of righteousness.